Welcome to The Explainer. You know, when we think of the pilgrimage to Mecca, we usually picture the Kaaba, right? The very heart of it all. But the journey doesn't actually start there. It begins hundreds of kilometers away, at these invisible borders, these spiritual gateways a pilgrim has to cross before they can even get close to the holy city.
And that brings up a really fascinating question. You've got millions of people all converging on this single point, but it's not like arriving in any other city. You can't just drive up or fly in and walk around. There are these ancient spiritual gateways that have to be honored first. So what are these sacred lines on the map, really? And what's their purpose?
Well, the answer lies in two sacred gates that a pilgrim has to pass through, the Miqat and the Haram. The trick is to stop thinking about the pilgrimage as a trip to one single place. Instead, it's a journey through a series of sacred zones, and each one pulls you deeper and deeper toward the center.
I like to imagine it kind of like a funnel. You start out in the big, wide, everyday world, and you're slowly guided, channeled toward this sacred heart. And this whole process is marked by two key boundaries, the outer one, which is called the Miqat, and the inner one, the Haram. So let's start our journey right there, at that first outermost gate, the Miqat. Okay, so this first threshold, the Miqat, it's basically the official spiritual starting line. For anyone who is performing the Hajj or the Umrah pilgrimage, this is the spot where the journey really begins. So what exactly is a Miqat? Well, the word refers to these specific locations that form a huge ring all the way around Mecca. And crossing this ring comes with one very simple but absolute rule. You cannot pass through it on your way to pilgrimage unless you've entered a special state of ritual purity, a state called Ihram. And just to give you a sense of scale here, we're not talking about some line on the edge of town. The farthest Miqat point is a staggering 426 kilometers away. To put that into perspective, that's about the distance from London to Paris. It's massive. The nearest Miqat, on the other hand, is just 54 kilometers out. So this huge range tells you something important. The sacred territory isn't just the city. It's this enormous zone all around it, totally dedicated to spiritual preparation. And this is where you see the elegant logic of the whole system. There are 5 of these historic Miqat locations, and each one acts as a gateway for pilgrims coming from a specific part of the world. You've got Zulhulayfa for people coming from Medina, Yalamlam for those arriving from Yemen, and others for people journeying from Iraq or the East. It's this incredible, deeply practical system for welcoming a truly global congregation. So how does this ancient system work today with, airplanes? The rules have adapted. Pilots will actually announce to the passengers when the plane is getting close to the Miqat line. This gives pilgrims time to make sure they're in the state of Ihram. And if you miss it, well, that has serious consequences. It could mean paying a penalty or even having to turn back to cross the boundary correctly. That makes one thing crystal clear. These borders are not just symbolic. They are a mandatory, crucial part of the pilgrimage. So crossing the Miqat isn't just about physically moving from one place to another. It requires entering that state of Ihram we've been talking about, and that is a transformative ritual that gets a pilgrim's mind, body, and soul ready for everything that's coming next. This transformation is a very deliberate, step-by-step process. It starts with prayer, but the real core of the ritual is declaring your formal intention, which is called the niyyah. After that, you recite a series of specific prayers. Every single step is designed to shift your focus away from worldly stuff and toward a state of pure devotion. This is the niyyah, the prayer of intention. It's a simple but incredibly powerful declaration. It's a personal conversation with God, and it reframes the entire journey. You're asking for ease, for acceptance. And in that one moment, a physical trip becomes a true spiritual offer. All right, so once a pilgrim has crossed the Miqat in a state of Ihram, the journey continues. As they get closer and closer to Mecca, they approach a second, even more sacred boundary, the inner sanctum, known as the Harem. The Haram is the inner sanctum, and the Kaaba is at its absolute center. Inside these borders, a profound sense of peace and reverence is mandatory, so much so that you're forbidden from harming any living thing, not even a plant. And the origins of the sacred space? They go way, way back. According to Islamic tradition, the sanctity of these boundaries goes all the way back to the time of Adam. It's believed that the prophet Abraham, guided by the angel Gabriel, was the one who first put down stones to physically mark the perimeter. Then, centuries later, these exact same markers were renewed by the Prophet Muhammad. So every pilgrim today is connected to a sacred geography that's been honored for millennia.
And what's really fascinating is how these boundaries even apply to people who live in Mecca. For the major pilgrimage, the Hajj, they can enter their state of Ihram right from where they are, inside the Haram. But for the lesser pilgrimage, the Umrah, they have to first leave the sacred area, go to a designated spot just outside it, enter Ihram there, and only then come back in. It's just a powerful example of how precise and meaningful these spiritual zones really are.
So, we've journeyed across the Miqat, and now we're inside the Haram. Which brings us all the way back to our main question. What's the ultimate point of this sacred geography? Why all these lines and rules and rituals?
And here's the answer. These boundaries were never just about lines on a map. They are spiritual tools. Each border, from the Miqat all the way to the Haram, is a threshold for the soul. The physical act of crossing them is specifically designed to trigger an internal change, a deliberate shift from the noise of the outside world to a state of pure, focused devotion.
Which leaves us with this one final thought. We've mapped out the outer journey, the physical borders that have to be crossed, but this entire structure is pointing to a much deeper, inner pilgrimage. If the external path is so carefully designed to purify and prepare a person, then what inner barriers of ego, of distraction, of attachment must a person cross to truly arrive? Now that is the question at the very heart of this sacred map. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.